Today we continue our new series, A Whiteshields Guide to 9th Edition. Hello and welcome back. I'm Knight Commander Cabe and this is a tactical and strategic focused channel aiming to increase your skill on the tabletop. Today, in our latest episode of A Whiteshields Guide to 9th Edition, we're looking at getting started in Warhammer 40k 9th Edition. So you might be asking yourself, so how do I get started in Warhammer 40k? Well, there's three main ways to get started in the hobby. And there are start collecting sets, launch sets / starter sets, or buying individual boxes. Each way has both pros and cons. Obviously, with the launch set, it's very good value for money, and obviously you get 2 armies and a rule book, literally everything you need to get started. Currently, the launch set of Indomitus for 9th edition is on a made to order only basis due to the amount of demand. It went up on when it first started to release. Depending on when you're watching this video, it may or may not still be in production, but by that stage there should be another starter set being replacing that, much similar to how Dark Imperium was, more geared towards brand new starters, whereas the launch set Indomitus was aimed more at people who are already in the hobby and basically just wanted to celebrate the new edition. Obviously with both of these you get a rule book and 2 armies. Obviously, depending on what army you want to have, this may sway your decision, but obviously if you don't want any of these 2 armies, this set may not be very good for you. So obviously you'll probably be looking at start collecting sets. Start collecting sets are another way, very good value for money to start collecting an individual faction. And pretty much I'd say 80% to 90% of all factions have a starter set. Obviously some of them haven't, just due to the fact that their army is actually quite small, and putting all models for that faction into one box isn't economically viable for Games Workshop, but that's another story entirely. Another way of getting started is actually going and just buy an individual boxes. So obviously if you want a tank, you want to buy a tank. If you want to go and buy some infantry, go and buy some infantry. Obviously that's another perfect way to start in the hobby. And but the only problem with that is you're not saving any money as you would in the start collecting set or launch / starter sets. Anyway, what else you will need? You will also need a codex for your selected faction. We'll get onto which faction you prefer later on in the video. And also you probably want to be picking up the 9th edition rulebook. You don't have to, but it's pretty much recommended because there's quite a lot of lore, missions and other ways to play in this. But you can also not buy, but on the Games Workshop website the core rules for 9th edition are free. So if you want to just download that and have a browse, see what the game's about, that's perfectly fine before you make any decisions. Personally, I'd recommend that, and probably watching a few YouTube videos to see what you like and what you don't like, or even better, go into a shop and ask for a demo, and pretty much that will give you a good feeling of what armies do what and all that. But obviously I'll carry on to explain more in depth in the next part of the video. Anyway, so choosing your first army. Basically, there's 3 overarching armies in the Warhammer 40k universe. There's the Imperium Man, the Forces of Chaos, and Xenos. So these are the main way that all the armies are categorised in Warhammer 40k. Obviously, the Imperium Man is your Space Marines, your Admech, Sisters of Battle, Astra Militarum. They're mainly like your human-esque type of faction for 40k. Obviously the Space Marines are more like a super soldier type of thing, and obviously they're the ones you're subjected to the most as you go into Games Workshop, because they're pretty much the poster child for the whole of the hobby. And then you've also got Chaos, so there's also Chaos Space Marines, and then also Demons, which come out of the warp and all of this. And then there's sub-factions of Chaos Space Marines as well as there is on Space Marines. So for Chaos you've got Death Guard, Thousand Suns and different other factions what will probably be coming out down the line. And then the Chaos and the Imperium are quite similar in stuff they use. Really, they might have slightly different, but the whole thing that they both use melter guns, both use las cannons. There's no real massive divergence from what weapons they use, as Chaos is a form of the Imperium who have broken away during the Horus Heresy. So and then coming completely out of it, there's the Xenos factions. So you've got things like Aldari, Jakari, G-Stealer Cults, Harlequins, Necrons, Orcs, Tau and Tyranids. These are all different factions who the Imperium are facing against, and they all have different ways how they fight. Obviously, like your Orcs, for example, are a Horde faction who are like very into the fighting and getting into the thick of it, and also like your Tyranids, very much a Horde faction going in for mainly combat, but obviously they do have shooting. Both Orcs and Tyranids both have shooting ways for their armies. So basically, they're all your factions there, and it looks daunting looking at it and like saying, "Oh, what should I buy?" But that decision is entirely down to you. At the end of it, it's like if you look at these, if you go onto the Games Workshop website and look at these individually, and see what you personally like the look of yourself, because there's nothing like buying an army like someone else is telling you, and you don't like painting it, you don't like playing it, and you've just wasted all that money on just something you don't like. So my personal preference and my advice to you is look at all these different factions and ask yourself, how do I want to play an army on the table? What's more fun to me, and what do I like the look of the most? Like you might say, oh, well, I feel like a combat type of person. So you might be looking at if you're looking for a Xenos faction, Orcs and Tyranids, or if you're looking for Chaos, the same thing for combat, you're probably looking at Chaos Space Marines, but for Khorne, very combat heavy army. But then again, there's other ways, like you probably want a little bit more of a tanky army, and you think, Death Guard are very good tanky with all the rules. Pretty much, it makes them very, very difficult to take off the table. But at the end, it's very personal what army you pick. Each have pros and cons. So, for example, Astra Militarum, a very, very tank heavy, infantry heavy army, cheap units, which deal a hell of a lot of firepower, and it's more like a World War One-esque type of play. Lots of artillery, lots of armour, lots of infantry, mass assault doctrine, and that's how they play. But people might find that's quite daunting. All of those models, all of those tanks. I'd rather go for something smaller. That's completely your entitlement to do. Then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got Imperial Knights. They're very, very small model count, but very, very powerful units. Obviously, in a 2,000 point game, you're probably only looking about 3 to 4 models in an Imperial Knight army. So obviously you can see that compared to probably 100 plus for other factions. So it's entirely what you want, really. It's like, do you want a lot of models, few models, shooty, combat, or do you want to go into psychic? If you want to go into psychic, you'd be looking at more Thousand Suns or Grey Knights. They're very two psychic heavy focused armies, but then again, you also find that Tyranids can put out a massive amount of psychic powers. So there's for each different army, there's different ways of playing. There's not just one set way of doing it. So just keep in mind that no matter what you pick, there is ways to change the way you play. Obviously, more armies are easier to play in other ways than others. Obviously, like Tau, you'd be very struggle to run that as a combat army. It can be done in ways, but I probably wouldn't recommend it for a new player. But yeah, if the best way to gauge when I started again a few years ago, I just watched a load of battle reports on YouTube and just see what I liked and what I didn't like, and from then I personally I picked Astra Militarum. I I played it many years ago when I was a kid, and I've always liked the faction. I've always enjoyed the way of a tank heavy army, so I went back and started Astra Militarum. When I started with that faction, I bought a start collecting set and a box of infantry, and I just started from there. And then over the last 5 years, it's just grown and grown and grown. So, but that's what I enjoy. But I'm sure you're all differently. But I wouldn't let anybody push you into an army that you don't like, and definitely don't chase the meta, because it's just constantly changing, and it's better to enjoy the army for the lore and how they look. Anyway, thanks for watching, and in the future I will be doing a bit more in-depth guide into this and what we have to do next after you've started their army. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to drop a like, comment and subscribe what you'd like to see next, and take it easy and good luck on the battlefield.